The Council of the 10,000 had ruled the galaxy for millennia, their influence stretching across countless star systems, their decrees enforced with near absolute certainty. Entire species measured themselves against the benchmarks the Council set, some aspiring to recognition, others bending to obedience, and a few quietly plotting rebellion, though few dared. Their authority was unquestioned, their judgment regarded as flawless, and their perception of power was meticulously honed over centuries. They observed civilizations, ranked planets, adjudicated disputes, and determined which species were capable, which were negligible, and which were dangerous enough to be contained. And then there was Earth. Earth was a speck, a backwater world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in a galaxy that held millions of stars and billions of habitable worlds. It was a planet of oceans and forests, of mountains and deserts, inhabited by a species that had barely scratched the surface of interstellar understanding. To the Council, it was insignificant, a minor curiosity, worth cataloging but unworthy of intervention or serious attention. They observed Earth occasionally, scanning for industrial growth, monitoring its communication signals, noting technological advancements, yet each observation only reaffirmed their preconceived assumption: humanity was primitive, petty, and inconsequential. The Council had made an error, not a small oversight, but the type of misjudgment that would ripple across the galaxy with devastating consequences. Humans were not what they appeared to be. From the surface, they seemed ordinary, frail, and confined to their planet. They fought amongst themselves with weapons that would seem archaic to any interstellar observer. Their political systems were chaotic, their conflicts frequent, and their alliances fragile. To an observer with arrogance in their heart and centuries of assumed superiority, it was easy to dismiss them entirely. But humans were patient. They had always been patient. While the Council gazed at them with disinterest, humans were quietly preparing. They had noticed the galaxy long before the galaxy noticed them. They had intercepted faint communications, traced the movements of distant fleets, and learned to read patterns that others ignored. While other species sought recognition, humans studied, planned, and built quietly. Hidden orbital platforms, autonomous drones, subterranean factories, AI systems designed to simulate countless potential threats. Every development was deliberate, every construction a hidden promise to the cosmos. We will endure, we will prevail, and you will not underestimate us. The first contact came as a demonstration of the Council's assumed authority. A massive envoy descended into Earth's orbit, a vessel the size of a small moon, its hull adorned with the sigils and symbols of centuries of interstellar governance. Its arrival was meant to intimidate, to remind the humans of their place in the hierarchy of the galaxy, to demand obedience before curiosity could even arise. A single broadcast carried the message, formal, mechanical, brimming with arrogance. Explain your presence in this sector. Justify your technological development. Acknowledge your subordination to the Council. The humans responded with quiet calm. They did not panic. They did not launch a rash counterattack. Instead, communications arrays hummed as hidden networks activated. Orbital defense platforms aligned into precise, unseen positions. Autonomous drones stirred from hidden bays. Systems calculated every conceivable reaction the Council might take. The humans were not just ready. They had anticipated this exact moment decades, even centuries in advance. Within the Council's vessel, the delegates could hardly believe what they were seeing. A world they considered insignificant was not only prepared for confrontation, It was orchestrating control over the encounter before a single shot had been fired. The humans' response was invisible, yet total. Fleet systems that were meant to intimidate were subtly manipulated, navigation disrupted, power grids recalibrated. Sensors flickered unpredictably, shields fluctuated, and every attempt to assert dominance met with immediate, precise neutralization. Admiral Krell, a veteran of 1,000 campaigns and a member of the Council for more than a century, muttered to his aide, disbelief etched across his face. They should not be capable of this. Our fleet, our technology, it should overwhelm them, yet every move we make is anticipated. Every maneuver rendered irrelevant. His officers were silent, some frozen in awe, others in panic. The humans were not reacting. They were orchestrating inevitability itself, executing a plan that the Council had neither predicted nor imagined. On Earth, life continued seemingly unaffected. Children played in the streets, merchants conducted trade, engineers worked in factories, scientists in laboratories. The ordinary calm of the planet belied the extraordinary systems at work above and below its surface. Orbital arrays adjusted automatically, drones activated in pre-planned sequences, subterranean facilities produced instruments of control and observation. Humanity's power was invisible, moral, and absolute in its precision. The Council had ignored them, and that was their first mistake, a mistake whose consequences would unfold in waves across the galaxy. From observation decks aboard the Envoy, the Council's delegates tried to recalibrate. Protocols, strategies, and contingencies were activated, but the humans had anticipated each one. Every assumption of weakness, every expectation of compliance, every arrogant belief in superiority was systematically invalidated. Humanity's response was not aggression, it was inevitability. Their patience had become a weapon. Their foresight had become a shield. Their moral precision had become an unassailable armor. Across the galaxy, other species that monitored the event whispered among themselves. "They are different," one diplomat said, voice trembling. "They are not aggressive. They do not rush. Yet every move we predict is already accounted for. Their silence is a weapon. Their patience is strategy." None could have predicted the scale, the subtlety, or the absolute inevitability of humanity's preparation. The Council had assumed that the humans would panic, would falter, would yield. But in doing so, they had underestimated the one quality that made humanity extraordinary, the ability to wait, to calculate, and to act with absolute precision when the time was right. And so, the first step of the humans' demonstration of power began. The Council's arrogance had blinded them. They had dismissed a species that appeared inconsequential. They had assumed that ordinary appearances equated to weakness. Yet, in their arrogance, they failed to notice that patience can be weaponized, foresight can neutralize fleets, and moral precision can achieve dominance without a single indiscriminate strike. The humans had waited. They had prepared. They had observed. And now, the galaxy would learn the cost of ignoring them. The Council's first mistake had been made, and it would be their last. As the Council floated above Earth, immobilized by the humans' unseen networks, the galaxy began to grasp the nature of the threat it had overlooked. Humans did not respond like other species. There was no frantic aggression, no immediate violence, no desperate attempts to defend themselves with bluster. Instead, there was anticipation. Their fleets and orbital platforms moved not to destroy, but to control. Every action taken by the Council was anticipated, countered, and rendered irrelevant before it could even begin. Orbital drones, small, silent, and unassuming, deployed in coordinated patterns that no Council tactician could have predicted. Engines on the massive Council envoy sputtered as kinetic stabilizers subtly disrupted propulsion systems. Energy shields oscillated, rendering attacks ineffective before the humans even needed to fire a weapon. Communication arrays, thought secure by the Council's sophisticated encryption, were rerouted and intercepted. Every maneuver, every attempt at intimidation was anticipated and neutralized. Admiral Krell's disbelief turned to panic. His centuries of experience, his knowledge of galactic warfare, all seemed meaningless. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They are everywhere and nowhere at once. They do not attack, they orchestrate. They do not react, they anticipate." His officers, long trained in the art of dominance and intimidation, could only watch in awe and fear as human-controlled systems rendered their massive fleet irrelevant. On Earth, the surface remained calm. Children played, laughter echoing through parks and playgrounds. Scientists worked tirelessly in laboratories, farmers harvested crops, and markets thrived with ordinary human commerce. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy, an intricate web of control extended from the planet's surface into orbit, across hidden space stations, and into autonomous drone fleets operating in every direction. Humans had transformed patience into a weapon, foresight into a shield, and moral restraint into an instrument of unstoppable power. Every move the Council attempted was preemptively countered. They fired warning volleys. Drones disabled weapon systems before they could discharge. They attempted electronic disruption. AI systems anticipated and redirected the interference. Entire fleets were immobilized before they could form a coherent attack formation. The humans did not panic, did not overextend, did not lash out indiscriminately. Every step of the Council's response had been studied, every strategy modeled, and every eventuality countered. Humans had weaponized the quiet, deliberate discipline that other species mistook for weakness. Observers from nearby star systems, watching the unfolding events through distant monitoring arrays, began to whisper in disbelief. "They do not fight like other species," a diplomat murmured. "They do not react impulsively. They do not rely on overwhelming firepower. Every move we predict they have already accounted for. Their silence, their patience, is a weapon unlike any we have ever seen." Across the galaxy, other civilizations started to reconsider their assumptions about humans. For centuries, they had assumed Earth's people were insignificant, primitive, and reactive. Now, they saw that this assumption had been catastrophically wrong. The Council's attempts to communicate with the humans only revealed their miscalculation further. Humans responded with deliberate calm, offering information, guidance, and coordination in a tone that was firm but not aggressive. They controlled the narrative, maintained moral authority, and ensured that no harm came unnecessarily to the Council's personnel. This moral precision, combined with absolute effectiveness, was a concept that many alien observers could scarcely comprehend. Humans were demonstrating dominance without chaos, control without destruction, a level of strategy that the galaxy had never witnessed. The next phase of human preparation began. Orbital platforms repositioned with invisible coordination, aligning sensors and drone fleets in patterns that neutralized the Council's remaining strategic options. Subterranean factories, continued to produce autonomous drones and AI systems designed to monitor and control every possible variable. Humans were not just responding, they were implementing a network of inevitability, a system that guaranteed their survival and dominance regardless of the Council's actions. For the Council, the consequences of their first mistake, the decision to ignore Earth, began to crystallize. Fleets were immobilized. Communications were intercepted. Supply lines were neutralized. Command structures fractured. Officers argued, shouted, and debated, but every countermeasure they attempted was anticipated and neutralized. Human patience had become absolute control, and every council attempt to regain authority only revealed the extent of their underestimation. On the planetary surface, ordinary human life continued. The apparent normalcy was deliberate. It concealed the extraordinary systems in place, yet also communicated an unspoken message to the galaxy. Humanity's power is not measured by visible aggression. It is measured by preparation, foresight, and restraint. Their calm was not weakness. Their patience was not passivity. It was a promise: underestimate us, and you will regret it. The Council's fleets drifted silently above the planet, disabled yet intact. Their crews could not comprehend how a species they had dismissed as primitive had immobilized them without a single indiscriminate strike. Every weapon neutralized, every system countered, every assumption reversed. Humanity had executed the ultimate strategy: victory without unnecessary destruction, dominance through inevitability and moral authority that imposed control over even the most arrogant powers in the galaxy. The first ripple of fear spread across other civilizations. Species that had once mocked humans as primitive or fragile began to reconsider. To be patient, to prepare, to wait and calculate, these were not weaknesses. They were the ultimate expressions of strength. The humans had not fought recklessly. They had fought wisely, and the galaxy would learn that one misjudgment, one failure to recognize the capabilities of this patient species, could unravel empires. The Council's first real response to humanity was fear. They realized, too late, that their arrogance had blinded them to the one species whose patience and preparation exceeded their imagination. Humans had remained silent, observed, and waited, and in that waiting, they had cultivated inevitability itself. Every move the Council assumed would secure compliance had instead exposed their vulnerability. The humans' patience was absolute. Their power was invisible, and it was unstoppable. By the end of the second week of orbital confrontation, the Council's command structure was beginning to collapse under the weight of its own miscalculation. Fleets were immobilized, supply lines severed, orders intercepted and rerouted. Humans had not launched catastrophic strikes, but they had demonstrated absolute control. The Council realized the unthinkable. The species they had ignored, dismissed, and underestimated was now dictating the terms of engagement in every corner of the galaxy they had once controlled. And on Earth, life remained ordinary. Children laughed in parks. Scientists conducted experiments. Farmers harvested their crops. Markets thrived. The humans' extraordinary power was invisible to all but the most careful observers. Yet it imposed an immutable order on the galaxy above. One mistake, the decision to ignore Earth, had begun to unravel centuries of arrogance. The Council would never underestimate humanity again. By the third week of the silent standoff above Earth, the true scale of human preparation had begun to manifest. The Council's fleets, once thought invincible, drifted like ghosts in orbit, powerless and immobilized. It was not the thunder of weapons that held them at bay, nor the destruction of their ships. It was the quiet inevitability of humanity's design. Every energy conduit, every navigation system, every command protocol had been anticipated and counted before it could even react. The humans had engineered not a battle, but a symphony of precision that rendered centuries of interstellar experience irrelevant. Admiral Krell stood on the observation deck of the Council's lead vessel, eyes wide as he watched yet another attempt to regain control fail. "It cannot be," he murmured to his aide, voice trembling. "Every move we make, every contingency neutralized before it even begins. How have they done this? How has a planet, a single species, accomplished the impossible?" Officers shuffled nervously behind him, muttering in disbelief, but no one could provide an answer. They had underestimated humanity, and that miscalculation had cascaded into chaos. Humans, meanwhile, did not celebrate. They did not gloat. On the planetary surface, life appeared as it always had. Children played in schoolyards, oblivious to the orchestration of fleets in orbit. Scientists adjusted experiments in laboratories. Farmers harvested their crops. In cities, traffic flowed. Marketplaces thrived, and ordinary routines continued as though nothing extraordinary were occurring. Yet beneath this ordinary surface, the machinery of inevitability ticked with flawless precision. Orbital drones moved in silent, precise patterns, constantly recalibrating to neutralize any potential threat. Autonomous AI systems monitored and analyzed every signal from the Council's fleets, predicting maneuvers, countering every attempt at coordination, and redirecting attacks before they could manifest. The humans had transformed patience and preparation into an unstoppable weapon, a force of inevitability that could immobilize fleets, fracture empires, and reshape galactic politics without a single unnecessary casualty. The Council tried to respond with aggression. Fleets fired warning volleys, energy pulses rippled through space. Commands were issued at light speed, expecting immediate compliance. But the humans anticipated everything. Shields absorbed energy in precise countermeasures. Propulsion systems faltered at the exact moment needed to prevent coordinated maneuvers. Autonomous interceptors neutralized kinetic weapons silently. Every Council attack was a non-event, their power rendered irrelevant by human foresight and strategy. In the Council's chambers, panic began to spread. Delegates argued heatedly, pointing fingers, blaming each other for failing to predict what they had once assumed was impossible. The arrogance that had allowed them to govern unchallenged for millennia now proved fatal. One species, one seemingly insignificant, isolated species, had exposed the fragility of their assumptions. One misjudgment, dismissing Earth and its people, had unraveled centuries of authority. Meanwhile, human coordination grew ever more intricate. Subterranean facilities produced new fleets of drones, automated command centers simulated millions of potential scenarios simultaneously, and orbital platforms continuously recalibrated their positions to maintain total control. The humans did not need to fire missiles or lasers to demonstrate superiority. They simply anticipated, controlled, and neutralized. Every attempt at rebellion by the Council's fleets was countered without a hint of overreach, without unnecessary destruction. The moral restraint of humans, combined with their operational precision, created a level of dominance no other species had ever exhibited. Galactic observers from nearby systems began to whisper in awe. "They do not react like other species," a diplomat noted to a colleague. "They do not escalate unnecessarily." Every move we anticipate already accounted for. Their silence, their patience, their control, it is unlike anything we have ever witnessed. The legend of humans began to spread, whispered across the stars, a species underestimated at its peril, whose patience was as lethal as firepower, whose foresight was an unassailable shield. Council commanders attempted to regroup, but the futility of their situation was becoming undeniable. Supply lines were intercepted, fleets immobilized, and command hierarchies fractured. Even distant worlds that had relied on the Council's authority started to question their allegiance, recognizing that humans had demonstrated absolute control without resorting to indiscriminate violence. Civilization after civilization realized that underestimating humans was not merely foolish, it was catastrophic. On Earth, the ordinary facade continued. No parades, no announcements, no ostentation. The power humans wielded was invisible to the casual observer, yet absolute in effect. The very calm of their daily lives communicated a quiet, terrifying message to the galaxy. Underestimate us, assume weakness, and your miscalculations will unravel entire empires. The Council had ignored Earth. They had assumed humans would yield. They had assumed insignificance, and they were now paying the price in real time. Their fleets incapacitated, their authority shattered. The final stage of the first phase of human dominance was underway. Orbital systems, AI networks, and autonomous drones coordinated with a precision that surpassed anything the Council had ever encountered. Fleets that had once seemed invincible were neutralized systematically. Communication attempts failed, redirected, or intercepted. Even the most sophisticated weaponry and tactics were rendered irrelevant by preparation, foresight, and moral precision. Humanity had turned patience into inevitability, and the galaxy was beginning to understand its cost. Historians, diplomats, and military strategists would later call this moment the human reckoning. It was a demonstration not of destruction, but of unassailable authority. Humans had proved that one species, underestimated and dismissed, could immobilize the fleets of a galactic empire through preparation, patience, and strategy alone. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of ignoring humanity. And through it all, Earth remained ordinary. Children laughed, cities thrived, and life continued. Yet, above them, across orbital platforms and hidden networks, the machinery of inevitability executed flawlessly. One mistake, the decision to ignore Earth, had begun to unravel the mightiest powers in the galaxy, and the humans had merely begun to demonstrate the full extent of their patience, precision, and power. The Council had underestimated their patience. The galaxy had underestimated their inevitability. And humanity's lesson had only just begun. By the fourth week, the Council's paralysis had become total. The once feared fleets that had patrolled and controlled entire sectors now drifted impotent above Earth. Their engines inert, their communications scrambled, their weapons rendered useless. The Council's delegates, accustomed to immediate compliance and unquestioned authority, could only watch in disbelief. Their arrogance, honed over millennia, had blinded them to the one species capable of rendering them irrelevant humans. Admiral Krell's frustration had turned to terror. We cannot move. Every system we attempt to activate fails. Every command we issue is anticipated, rerouted, or neutralized. How is this possible? His voice trembled, unsteady with fear and awe. Officers shuffled nervously behind him, realizing for the first time that centuries of technological and tactical superiority meant nothing against a species they had dismissed as primitive. Every contingency the Council had planned, every strategic principle they had relied upon, had been anticipated, studied, and countered. Humanity had transformed patience, foresight, and moral precision into a weapon the Council could neither comprehend nor oppose. The humans, however, did not gloat. They did not celebrate. On the surface of Earth, life continued as if nothing extraordinary were happening. Children played, laughter echoing through schoolyards. Scientists adjusted experiments in laboratories. Farmers harvested crops. Markets thrived with the hum of ordinary commerce. Humanity's true power lay in this normalcy, a fey-aid that concealed the extraordinary networks of control operating both above and beneath the planet's surface. Orbital drones moved in orchestrated patterns, autonomous and invisible, neutralizing any attempt by the Council to regain tactical advantage. AI systems monitored every signal, every movement, and every communication, predicting outcomes with a precision that exceeded even the Council's most advanced calculations. Subterranean command centers coordinated the deployment of fleets and drones, recalculating thousands of contingencies in real time. Humans did not need to destroy the Council's ships, they needed only to render them powerless. The collapse of the Council's authority was swift and absolute. Fleets were immobilized, supply lines severed, and command hierarchies fractured. Orders that had once ensured obedience now faltered, intercepted, and rerouted before they could be executed. Even distant worlds, previously loyal to the Council, began to question their allegiance. Reports of humans' capabilities spread rapidly, a species that could neutralize entire fleets without firing indiscriminate weapons, that maintained moral precision while asserting total control. Across the galaxy, whispers of awe and fear circulated. Diplomats, officers, and scholars alike marveled at the scale of humanity's achievement. They do not act like other species, a representative of a nearby system murmured. They do not react with brute force. They anticipate. They neutralize. They impose control with surgical precision, and they do so without needless destruction. It is unprecedented. The realization sank into every corner of the galaxy. Humans were not merely capable, they were inevitable. One misjudgment, ignoring their patience, had unmade the authority of the most powerful governing body the galaxy had ever known. The Council attempted to salvage their fleets. They issued orders for coordinated counterattacks, attempted to regroup their forces, and tried to reassert control through intimidation. Each attempt was countered effortlessly. Drones disabled engines, AI systems rerouted communications, and orbital arrays recalibrated to maintain dominance. The human strategy was not only effective, it was elegant, precise, and morally restrained. They had weaponized patience into a force the galaxy could not ignore. On Earth, ordinary humans continued their daily lives. Children played, scientists observed, farmers worked, and cities thrived. Yet all of this concealed an immense operational network of strategic control. Humans had created a system of inevitability, a network that ensured the Council's failure without unnecessary destruction. Every action taken by the Council was accounted for, anticipated, and neutralized. Every assumption, every misjudgment had been exploited. Humanity had proven that preparation, foresight, and moral restraint were more powerful than raw aggression or overwhelming numbers. The collapse of the Council sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Civilizations that had previously aligned themselves with its authority began to reconsider their positions. Independent worlds, previously compliant, now saw humans as the new standard of power. It was not the firepower of humans that commanded respect. It was their control, their anticipation, and their moral authority. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo for centuries. Do not underestimate the species that observes, that waits, that calculates, and that acts with inevitability. In the Council's chambers, the delegates could no longer argue. Their fleets were paralyzed, their authority eroded, their credibility destroyed. The arrogance that had sustained them for millennia had become their undoing. Humanity's patient orchestration of events had revealed the fragility of what they had assumed was unshakable control. One misjudgment, ignoring Earth, had begun the collapse of an empire. And on Earth, life remained ordinary. Children laughed in schoolyards. Scientists conducted experiments. Markets thrived. Humanity's extraordinary power remained invisible to the casual observer. Yet its impact was absolute. They had not fired a single indiscriminate shot, yet entire fleets were neutralized. They had not engaged in reckless aggression, yet the Council's authority crumbled. Their patience, foresight, and moral precision had rewritten the rules of interstellar engagement. By the end of the 4th week, the galaxy had begun to realize a universal truth. Humans are patient, humans are precise, and humans are inevitable. One mistake ignoring their preparation could unravel empires. The Council had made that mistake. The consequences were total, visible in the immobilized fleets, fractured command structures, and the fear that spread across neighboring systems. Humanity had demonstrated a form of dominance that was invisible, morally restrained, and utterly unassailable. The final lesson of this segment became clear. Power was not merely in destruction, not in overwhelming force, but in preparation, patience, and the quiet, relentless execution of inevitability. Humans had shown the galaxy that to underestimate them was to court collapse. The Council had ignored Earth, and in doing so, had set into motion a chain of events that would reshape interstellar politics forever. And as ordinary life continued below, Earth's people watched the skies with calm confidence. They had waited, they had prepared, and they had ensured that one arrogance, the decision to ignore them, would never again go unpunished. By the 5th week, the full scale of humanity's mastery had become undeniable. The Council's fleets drifted like inert shadows above the planet, powerless, their authority shattered. Systems that had once extended their influence across thousands of star systems were immobilized, their command structures fractured, their delegates reduced to whispers of fear and disbelief. Humanity had achieved dominance not through destructive force, but through patience, preparation, and moral precision, a method no species had anticipated, and one no species could oppose without paying a catastrophic price. Earth itself remained calm, ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in its orchestration. On the surface, children played in sunlit parks, their laughter echoing across cities untouched by panic. Scientists monitored their experiments in laboratories, occasionally glancing at orbital monitors for anomalies that had long since become routine. Farmers worked fields, markets buzzed with trade, and families went about daily life as if nothing remarkable were occurring. Yet beneath this ordinary rhythm, a network of extraordinary capability extended into orbit, into space, and into every corner of the planet's infrastructure. Humanity had weaponized patience itself. Admiral Krell, the highest-ranking officer still aboard the immobilized Council flagship, finally realized the totality of the error. His voice trembled as he addressed the remaining delegates. We underestimated them. We assumed weakness. We assumed compliance. Every calculation, every contingency, futile. They anticipated everything. Every move we made was accounted for. Every assumption we held about dominance invalidated. Officers behind him shuffled uneasily, realizing that a species they had dismissed as insignificant had not only neutralized their fleets, but had rewritten the rules of interstellar power. Across the galaxy, observers scrambled to comprehend the implications. Reports filtered in from distant systems. Planets that had been considered allies of the Council began to question their loyalty. Independent civilizations marveled at the humans' methodical restraint. Once arrogant species reevaluated their understanding of power itself. Humanity's dominance was not measured in destruction or terror. It was measured in inevitability, precision, and foresight. To underestimate them was to invite ruin. Humans did not enforce their dominance with fear. They had the power to obliterate fleets, to reduce entire cities to silence, yet they refrained. Their moral restraint was as integral to their power as their technological sophistication. Orbital drones and AI networks did not act indiscriminately. Every system was precise, controlled, and purposeful. The humans had demonstrated to the galaxy a simple yet profound truth. Ultimate power does not require wanton violence. It requires control, anticipation, and patience. The Council's delegates attempted one final maneuver, a coordinated effort to regain authority through a show of force, a simultaneous broadcast intended to demonstrate that Earth was still within their jurisdiction. The humans, of course, had anticipated this. Signals were rerouted, disrupted, and neutralized with surgical precision. The attempt collapsed before it could manifest, leaving the Council's representatives stunned and humbled. Every assumption they had held about dominance, obedience, and hierarchy had been systematically dismantled. Humanity's lesson extended beyond military might. It was a demonstration of moral clarity and strategic patience. They had proven that power could be exercised with restraint, that patience could neutralize the most arrogant fleets, and that moral precision could achieve dominance without chaos. The Council, which had once believed itself untouchable, had been humbled not by violence, but by foresight and discipline. Across the galaxy, species realized that underestimating humans was no longer merely foolish, it was suicidal. On Earth, ordinary life continued. Children's laughter filled playgrounds. Markets hummed with trade. Families shared meals. Scientists monitored experiments. Yet all of this ordinary life belied the extraordinary orchestration of the humans' quiet dominance. They had proven that patience could be weaponized, that foresight could render empires powerless, and that moral precision could command respect and fear simultaneously. Humanity's control was complete yet invisible, profound yet unassuming. The Council's collapse reverberated across interstellar politics. Systems that had once been beholden to its authority sought alternative alliances. Diplomats scrambled to realign. Military strategists analyzed the humans' methods in disbelief. It was no longer a question of whether Earth was a threat. It was a question of how every species in the galaxy would survive without provoking it. The humans had set a new precedent, demonstrating that patience, moral clarity, and preparation could achieve more than fleets, weapons, or intimidation ever could. Historians would later record this period as the moment the galaxy learned humility. They called it the silent reckoning, the time when one species, underestimated for centuries, revealed the extraordinary potency of patience. The humans had waited, calculated, and executed with inevitability. They had exposed the fragility of arrogance and the danger of dismissing even a seemingly ordinary species. The galaxy had learned, in the most profound way possible, that humans are not to be underestimated. And yet, humanity did not exult. Their power, immense and absolute, was exercised with quiet restraint. Earth remained a world of ordinary life, where children laughed, farmers worked, and scientists observed. The humans had reshaped the galaxy without chaos, had neutralized an empire without destruction, and had demonstrated that the most extraordinary force was not the one that screamed the loudest, but the one that waited, calculated, and acted with certainty and moral clarity. By the end of the 5th week, the galaxy had learned the ultimate lesson. One mistake against humanity, a misjudgment of patience, foresight, and restraint was enough to unravel empires. One era of arrogance could invite the quiet, unstoppable force of a species that prepared for centuries, while others assumed irrelevance. The Council had ignored Earth. They had assumed compliance. They had assumed insignificance. And now, every corner of the galaxy understood the truth. Humans are patient. Humans are precise. And humans are inevitable. The Council's fleets remained in orbit, immobilized, while the humans quietly continued life on their planet. Children played in parks. Cities thrived. Scientists observed the stars. Humanity had delivered a message to the galaxy with quiet certainty: underestimate us, and the consequences will be catastrophic. Their patience had become a weapon, their moral clarity a shield, their inevitability an unassailable force. And the galaxy would never again make the mistake of ignoring humanity.